So let's get going with this next session. And this session is all about data. It's all about understanding what shows to launch and what can data tell us about the right podcast for our audiences. We've two great speakers to come now to help with that. And after they've both spoken, then Chitra will help with questions and everything else from there. But first, this is another first at Podcast Day Asia. It's the first time that anyone has seen this data outside of Denmark. Thrilled to invite this person to the stage, the tallest man in the room. From Denmark Radio, their Senior Strategic Advisor on Audio Content. Please welcome Peter Nigel. Peter.
Hello. Oh, I better do this. And there's a clicker, yes. Hello, everyone. Yes, I am Peter Nigel. Some of you know me as the CEO of Radio Days, but in my day job, I am, as James just introduced me, I'm an advisor on audio for my organization in Denmark, the Public Service Institution of DR, which is yes, the equivalent of BBC in Denmark. So my topic, I have 20 minutes. I have presented this for the last 6 months in my own organization, and usually for each of the presentations I spend 2 hours, so I have to do this in 20 minutes with a case. So bear with me if I'm jumping ahead a little bit. There's a lot of data in it, so you can always get me afterwards and ask questions if you have some. As again, yes, we've never presented this outside organization, so this is a first as well. And I think the methodology you'll like, because it's something you can actually just, the kit, you can just take it and use it in your own markets. So this is from the Danish public organization to all of you. Okay, since 2020, 2023, we did some huge surveys, or I did, identifying the needs and preferences of the Danish population with regard to podcasting. So what do they want? In age groups, in demographics, and everything. We broke it down so that we could target our podcast offering to each individual demographic. We could understand the size and in the individual segments and the potential in the individual segments. How, where, when we listen to podcasts. All these things we know already. But we kind of needed a third analysis. Hi, Jose. You're taking a picture there. Good. Okay. So we needed a third to try to attack it from the other side, to understand what are the driving forces behind the most successful podcast and how can we implement those characteristics into our own market, into our own podcast. We wanted to increase downloads and we wanted to attract new listeners to our app. So what we do basically is we focus on the content and genres that enjoy a high degree of popularity in markets outside Denmark. So we were looking for gaps in our own market. So there are areas in our own market, genres we're not doing very well in, but we can see from other markets across that they were doing quite well in other markets. Why? That's what this analysis is all about. So first, we defined the gaps in the Danish market compared to other markets. There's two steps in this analysis. So the first one, how do we do that? So basically, we data mine public rankers. I'll tell you how and how we did it. Then we define categories which has a raw potential, basically meaning there's a lot of listeners in this and we don't have it. Let's get it. The other one is we're a public service organization. So politics, news, younger demographics has a special interest from us. So the gap might not be that big in those genres, but we still need to understand why, because they're of special interest to public service broadcasters. When we've mapped this, then we take those individual genres that are of interest to us and we use semiotics, textual analysis to get to the bottom of the underlying structures that defines success in these podcasters. And I will take you through the methods now. First, the data mining. So basically, all over the world, you all have access to public rankers, Spotify, Apple, Chartable, not Chartable anymore, they're closing that one down. Triton, Podchaser, DR Lyd, that's our own app, and then Podcast Index, which is the national ranker in our market. You all have these public available rankers, and you need at least a couple, because the thing is, no current top 50 ranker. You can't just go into Spotify, because that's skewed one way. Apple skewed another way, so you kind of need an aggregate of these to get a reasonable numbers of the top 50. We're using top 50 as a proxy for the most successful genres. So basically, you're doing the percentage of how is true crime based on the individual podcasts doing in UK, how is it doing US, how is it doing Sweden, Germany, France, and so forth. And based on this, you kind of see, okay, in this case, true crime was doing really, really well in a lot of markets, but not so well in Denmark. We had a few, but not necessarily anywhere near our comparing markets. Why? We're doing it, we're somehow doing it wrong. So we had to look at the other ones to see what is it they're doing, and we are not. The same for comedy, the same for politics, the same for relationships, that kind of thing. This is, well, I didn't translate this, sorry, this is in Danish, but basically the greens are the ones that are of special interest. So true crime, that's comedy, that's sundhed, that's health, and art and culture, and then there's television and films, and there's also finance in there. Those are the ones by numbers who we can see we are performing under our comparing markets. So those are the ones that are of special interest. So true crime, humor, health, and business, raw numbers, we're doing really bad compared to other markets. Well, bad. I say bad because when you look at society, news, history, and science, we were overperforming. So we don't need to look at those, but we need to look at those that we are not kind of the average in the other markets. And then, of course, the service potential in Denmark is the one in the middle. So now we identified the gaps and which genres we're not doing very well in. Then we have to go to the second part, which is the textual analysis. We were 3 individual researchers working on this to ensure that the results we got back were independent. So it wasn't, we did the analysis, we met, and then if the conclusions were the same, we were on the same page. It looked like we were getting the right answers. First off, we did a huge textual study, semiotics and I don't know what. So we had like the Likert scale. We have, I think, 50 kind of Likert scale from 1 to 5. What is its position, host, motor, mood, all kinds of things. And the same with using the, like Roman Jacobson and semiotics. We did a whole lot of that. But don't be scared, you don't have to do it, because we found out after the first thing that actually you can kind of boil it down to headlines. You can kind of go, we need to understand the motor, we need to understand the mood, we need to understand the host, we need to understand, I think it was 10 things we boiled it down to, that this is what is actually driving the podcast, successes and, yeah. So we just did that. We did due diligence, but actually we don't need to do that much, but it's there so that we have done due diligence. Okay, how long have I got left? 10 minutes? 11 minutes? Well, it stopped, so I really don't know. Okay, basically, I can take any one of those cases, but I've taken one case, and in this case, it's true crime. And I've taken it because that was the first one we presented back in January. And since then, that difference between Denmark and the other countries has actually leveled up. So we did produce 2 true crimes, and one of our competitors did, because they got hold of the research, and they kind of did one also. And all of them went into our top 50. So now it's actually leveled up in Denmark. So now we are on par with our comparing neighboring markets on true crime. So it is working, that's what I'm saying. So let's see what the recommendations for true crime were. Oh, sorry, there's no recommendations. There we are. Okay, first of all, these are some of the specific podcasts that was in the top 50 in markets. We're looking at Crime Junkies and My Favorite Murder in US, Red Hand and Case File in UK. This is Swedish, The Case I Never Forget, and Swedish Crimes. Then there's the 2 that was already there in our market. Then there's some German ones, Weird Crimes and The Murder of My Ex. And there's a few others. Just to say, over 2 months, we analyzed these a couple of times, like 5 of the episodes, and then we were doing the textual analysis. So this is just not one, this is 8 different countries, and we're looking for general characteristics. I have a 50-slide presentation I do for my colleagues. I try to boil that down to 8, so you have to forgive me for the squeezing in this. But there are 3 things that I'm going to bring you. First of all, an understanding of where do we come from. What was 10 years ago, what was true crime? And then what is true crime today? And then, in the end, a kind of a takeaway for you. So what have we learned in the process? So, where do we come from? 10 years ago, when podcasts came into the world, and also true crime was the one following right on its tail, like Serial and, S-Town, all these things. They were characterized by journalistic involvement, maybe an investigative approach, an attempt to solve the case. There were montages, there were sound effects. The focus was on the narrative momentum and creating attention in the podcast. This is where we came from, and this was also maybe what was characterizing the Danish true crime scene before we started this research. So where are we today? This is a summary, and then I'll go deeper into each of them. The first one that we found as a general characteristic is what I've tried to translate this from Danish, but it's the joy of disgust. So the general mood you want to reach in your podcast, and that we identified in almost every one of the successful podcasts in the neighboring markets, is this joy of disgust. So you are a little bit disgusted and a little bit like, oh, what's going on in this podcast? This is creepy, right? But at the same time, you really like that sensation. It's kind of really nice. So it's in the interaction of these two that you actually need to build your mood in the podcast. The other one that we identified across was authenticity, that should meet a huge commitment to create suspense. So we came from a place where authenticity was the main thing, like true crime, but we could see across that has been left, and it's much more this commitment to creating suspense that is the driving force more. But it is still a combination of the two. It's just there's a huge focus on this creating suspense, and actually maybe even fiddling with the true in true crime. And then, of course, I'm just saying, also good to know, in the first 2 research bits we did, we understood that the target group for true crime is mainly female listeners between 30 and 50, and also young between 15 and 30. So these are in the Danish market at least, are the ones that are especially focused on this genre and we need to address. Meaning, when we then develop the podcast, then these 2 are the demographics that we particularly need to ask, how do you like this? And we did. So, where are we today? We found out that it kind of mostly is a 2-host thing, the true crime. That works the best, we saw. And also that between the 2 hosts, there's a primary narrator, and then there's also another host, which is kind of our host. This is the internal listener, representing us in the podcast. The structure is either linearly or circularly, and the whole point of the structure is to create suspense. It's not like telling about the truth or that. No, basically the whole thing in the successful podcast is based around creating this suspense. They're dropping information. They keep us in the dark. All kinds of things. So again, it's more suspense than is true in the crime. The structure, different aspects of just examples, using a photograph to create suspense. We also have for the realistic, from Swedish crimes, a lot of the true crimes we looked at, they had live audio clips from courtrooms and interrogation rooms. That is not a lot of markets where that is allowed, but we saw in many of the successful true crime podcasts. Then they have a written report from the interrogation and the courtroom, and then they have actors acting out the actual, what happened to create the suspense, to create that feeling. The mood. Originally, back in the Serial days, we could see that objectivity, factual, that kind of thing was high. But we see a lot of, it's more emotionally based now. They show disgust, shock, delight in the true crime. And also the language is much more informal than it was 10 years ago. We have bursts of emotion in the dialogue between the hosts, and they're talking like two good friends, so it's very casual and relaxed. There's humor in true crime, which was banned like 10 years ago. So humor is now part of this true crime. We can not laugh at it, but we can increase the mood by humor, which was surprising to me because we had absolutely no humor before in the Danish true crime. We do now. And then also they were made easily available. It's not hard. We don't need a lot of language from the courtrooms and the crime scenes. We just needed to understand it very fast and quickly. Here are some examples of from weird crimes again, about how you do that. Then the motor, very important, a third of the 10. Almost all true crime stories that are based on, everybody know about them by now. I mean, there's not a lot of crime left we haven't really covered. So it's all about how to do a good new narrative on this original true crime. So a fast narrative pays to uncover, create, and renew suspense. So again, back to the suspense. We know about the crime. We kind of also know, we read about it in the papers, but you kind of need the narrative story arc to really make it into a popular podcast. Here are some examples of how to create suspense instead of real, create suspense. So I saw a case file, they're using fake clues to keep us, so again, what happened to true in crime? It's all about building this suspense. There's also things like building a personal relationship to the topic of crime. There's this retired commissioner from the police who was talking about the cases he never forgot. So that's the kind of the suspense. Why didn't he forget it? How horrible was it? That kind of thing. So, I don't know about time. I think I'm still okay. Good, because this is the last slide. Thank you for staying with me. Went a little bit fast. Okay, so I would say, takeaway for you, and you can talk to me afterwards and say I'm a clown, or you say, oh, that's really good. Can you give me some more hints? Both is very welcome. So one, you can identify genres that have a potential for success in your market, as the genre is underdeveloped compared to other genres. So it is possible using data mining to actually pinpoint what you can be doing. Think of this as red water, blue water, right? So in your market, in my market, news, red water. We have the number 1, we have the number 2 news podcast. Nobody's getting near us because we are the best in those genres. But then we have a genre like relationship, or we have a genre like true crime. We're really bad at that. So that's a blue water in Denmark. It's red water in ocean. Sorry, that's the word. Red ocean, blue ocean. So it's a red ocean in the UK, it's red ocean in Germany, but in Denmark, wide open playing field. So do what they do in Germany, do what they do in UK, and you have an opportunity in your own market. 2, you can create the grid for a shared discussion on innovation. You can challenge yourself as producers, and maybe through this, create something useful. It's not like a face it, like what do you call it? This is the result. You have to do this. It's also like you have to talk to the producers and the people doing the podcast. But it is a very interesting thing to get this grid so that you actually have a basis to discuss from. And I would say from the semiotics and the textual analysis, there are shared characteristics of successful genres across cultures and markets. So if you're in a creative situation, what should I do? How should I build my podcast? It will make it a little bit easier. You can say, I don't want to do that, I want to go in the other direction. I'm just saying, if you take these tips, it'll make it easier in your creative development to go in that direction. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. So I would like to now invite the second speaker for this session, Francisca Christi Rosana, or Cica. Cica is from Tempo magazine. So Tempo magazine is a very prominent magazine in Indonesia, mostly covering investigative issues and political issues. And they have this very popular political podcast called Bocor Alus. It means fine leaks. And we will talk about how Tempo built its podcast from magazine moving to podcast, and they're doing this as video podcast. It's very popular. Peter talked about narrative, suspension, and everything, and we'll hear from Cica about how Tempo built Bocor Alus podcast. Over to you, Cica.
Hi everyone, my name is Francisca. I work for Tempo Media, and I'm a journalist, political journalist. In the last 2 years, we built a political podcast named Bocor Alus Politik, and I have 10 minutes to explain how we transforming from print media to digital, especially podcasts. Okay. In first slide, there is a dinosaur. Why dinosaurs? For me as a millennial, Tempo magazine seems like dinosaurs. Why? Because at least when I joined with Tempo Media in 10 years ago, everything about Tempo was very old school for me. Tempo magazine was only strong in Java, and our readers were very segmented. Our readers are mostly over 50 or 60 years old, and mostly males as profile readers. And in early 2000, Tempo built online media named Tempo Interactive and later named Tempo.co. But we were stagnant in digital development until 2020, and there is no significant developments in digital, and we are simply moving print articles to online. And Tempo is already 54 years old. I will introduce you about Tempo. Tempo grows as an independent media, one of independent media in Indonesia. Why Tempo is different? Yeah, you know that Tempo has a strong character in investigative journalism, and we focus on the story behind the story about some issues. We uncover various corruption scandals and abuse of authority in a policy making. And in 1994, the Suharto regime temporarily banned Tempo for its investigative report on a government contract to buy several former East German warships for the military. After that, Tempo went underground and published as an online news portal when maintaining its role as a watchdog. And Tempo was relaunched after the fall of the Suharto regime, and by now, Tempo carries out the function of a watchdog journalism. We expose corruptions, uncover abuse of authority, and provides a platform for diverse political views and holding the government accountable to the public. And now we play a vital role in a strengthening of democracies. And as a print media industry, you know that we have a big problem. Our problem are our business are stagnant. We cannot reach a larger reader community. Why? Because you know that there are changing consumer preference. By now, younger generations have grown up with digital media and often prefer online formats, and it's contributing to declining readership of traditional print. And you know that there are digital competition, declining advertising revenue. In digital era, print media revenues are dropping steadily, and the cost of printing and distributions it's a problem for us. The print media industry faces rising costs for materials, examples, paper, ink, labor, and fuel. And that's why we grow. That's why we change and we grow. We start with changing the conventional mindset. We are trying to develop digital content. We move news articles into other formats, such as podcast in YouTube platform. And why YouTube? Because YouTube is valuable platform for reaching millennial and Gen Z, and YouTube, you know that Indonesian citizens really like to discuss about politics in social media, in YouTube, and in coffee shops, and people talk about politics, about elections, but not everyone has a good political educations. They consume this information, hoax, and and in Tempo, we have strong informations and education about the politics, and we saw that opportunity. So then we utilize podcast as a showcase to encourage consumer to read our articles. So we share a little bit information of some political issues on the podcast, and if you want to know more information about that issues, about the political situation, about that political conditions, you can access our articles in Tempo magazine on digital platform or print versions. And we face the challenges of gaining public trust when we launch the podcast, and when our podcast first air, people wondering, who are these people? Who are Cica? Who are Rikang? Who are Pram? Are they talking about rumors or gossips? And because not everyone is familiar with Tempo, because Tempo is dinosaur for millennial and Gen Z, and when people familiar with Tempo, they don't know how Tempo grow, how Tempo change, and so as Tempo journalists, we maintain our integrity to build the public trust on the podcast. We present our content on Bocor Alus Politik to appears in Tempo magazine. Day by day, people have come to realize that we present our podcast, our content, and our message in podcast is actually true. And for example, when we publish the uncover about the Constitutional Court scandal regarding the presidential and vice presidential age limits, and that issue was proven in the Constitutional Courts at the council hearing, people have come to believe that we are trustworthy journalist podcast, political podcast. And we still remember our first episode was Jokowi, the former president, as a kingmaker, and in that episode we share our coverage of how Jokowi pushed Prabowo and Ganjar Pranowo to become a presidential candidate, and he also tried to push Anies Baswedan aside, and despite all his efforts, and we realized that we air for the first time. We air at the right time. You know that during the presidential election, and many people want to know what was happening in the political situations at the time, and people access Bocor Alus Politik and watch Bocor Alus Politik to know the currently situation at the time. And then we continue to grow, and we got 100,000 views on our first episode, and yeah, not bad, but not significant either. Then we continue to grow. We produce a weekly podcast based on our reporting in weekly in Tempo magazine. So what we convey in the podcast is the same as we publish in Tempo magazine. However, we don't share all information in the podcast. We encourage our viewers to subscribe the Tempo magazine. And yeah, our last episode is about new capital city in East Kalimantan and public protest in Jakarta. And now we can reach viewers over 1 million per episode. And as the impact for me and my friend as a journalist is we become being popular, but we still not celebrities. We are just journalists, you know, and yeah. And what's the impact for journalists, for public, and for our company? Yeah, you know that with this engagement, we face challenges and risks. Tempo has a long history of facing challenges to its investigating reporting. We receive a package containing Pig's Head on March in this year, addressed to me as a journalist, hosting Bocor Alus Politik podcast. And yeah, beyond all that, we had a positive impact with the podcast. Yeah, besides engagement, we're restoring trust in the media, and through podcast, we encourage the public to be more critical. And for the company, another impact for the company are increase the revenue, and we got a broader and younger subscriber to our magazine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Cica. I would like to invite Peter to go on stage as well, as we will continue with some discussion. I think, yes, I was just sit here. Okay, so let's start from the first question that I have in mind. So Peter started this research wanting to find the gaps in the market, what genre, and Tempo started with the need to find new audience. So going to Peter first, do you have some thinking about going to another different type of audience while doing the research, or is it just tapping which genre?
I don't think I should have talked more about that. So we did two initial big surveys, 1,500 people in each, and in those we were targeting, finding out what are the different target demographics and what do they like. And for instance, like true crime, I used as an example, we could see that, for instance, females 30 to 50, we were not doing very well by them. And then identifying that the genres that they particularly loved, they also liked some other genres, but the true crime genre was one of their, a lot of them listens to this. So thus, going to the third analysis and finding out that we didn't do true crime very well, that kind of corresponded. So in the same sense, now, building on this, for a new round we're rolling out now when I get back from Asia, we are particularly going into youth, because that's a big thing for us. And even though we're doing really well in news, we will be going into what news is doing particularly well among younger audiences. And we're going to look a lot on humor, and we're looking a lot on relationships, because the last two are particularly liked by younger demographics.
Okay, and now to Cica. You start with dinosaur, and then you start with wanting to tap in younger audience. But there are also research like saying that youth are not interested in political issues, youth not interested in news, the rising number of news avoidance. Why did Tempo decided to? How did Tempo come to the decision to make political podcast?
Yeah, I can explain with bahasa Indonesia and you can translate
Yes,
with.
I will help
yeah,
Cica to
okay.
translate.
Yeah, to be more effective. Ya, Tempo ingin mengedukasi banyak. Tempo yang ingin mengedukasi banyak pembaca dan milenial dan Gen Z yang terpapar oleh hoax dan media sosial. Salah satu caranya adalah dengan kami mempenetrasi informasi yang kami dapatkan di lapangan dengan valid dan mengantisipasi, memitigasi adanya hoax dan disinformasi melalui podcast di YouTube karena podcast itu mudah sekali untuk diakses oleh semua orang.
So Tempo is about educating people, the audience, the millennial and Gen Z, and we know that in Indonesia there are a lot of hoaxes and misinformation. So Tempo wants to penetrate the information ecosystem with information gathered from the ground, valid information gathered from the ground to anticipate hoax running around in the society. Okay, and I go to Peter again about the format. In the research, I learned that most of the genres are like the true crime are more narrative. Is it true? Is it what I'm looking at the research? Is it more on narrative aspects or more Q&A for true crime?
Broad
Both?
and large, yes, it's more narrative. It is about building a suspense. There are individual podcasts that does it slightly different, but when we look at the individual podcasts across these 10 countries we were looking at, it's very much a narrative. It is a dialogue between, but they are building a narrative between them, and with you know they have like. I went through it in my presentation. So they're having this. They are all folding a narrative already kind of scripted in advance, throwing in the horror, the emotions and all that. So it isn't like investigative in the and what happened then. And no, it is a narrative arc that they are producing. And the purpose is to involve, discuss, and make people go suspense.
Okay, so for Cica, coming from the suspense thing, so is it also something that Tempo producers and you as the host also build in the podcast, how to build the suspense and the emotion into the podcast?
I don't know how to say, but sebagai jurnalis kami memang tidak terbiasa untuk berbicara. Kami biasa dengan tradisi tulis-menulis dan kami tidak terbiasa untuk berbicara di depan publik. Maka untuk membangun podcast itu kami memulai dengan sangat sulit, belajar dari awal. Produser kami adalah mantan produser di salah satu televisi nasional dan dia mengajari kami host di Wajar Alus Politik untuk bagaimana caranya menyampaikan informasi kepada pembaca yang sekarang adalah penonton dengan gaya yang berbeda, dengan gaya yang bukan tempo tapi informasinya tetap tempo.
Okay, so as journalist, Cica mentioned that she's not used to speaking in public, so she's more on traditional aspect of journalism in writings. So they started from scratch. They have a producer with background from TV, and the producer helped them convey the information that they gather on the field to the viewers, not to readers as they used to be. So yes.
May I just elaborate with that, because I think it's interesting, because this is the true crime genre that dispense, but we also did a big analysis on the genre of politics, because we were really bad at politics in Denmark, and you're much better, it seems. So now, but just saying, that is a total different push in politics. That is the serious conversation, the in-depth, we should take politics seriously, where we have a history going back, like it's spin. It's, spin, is that that's spin, yeah? It's spin, it's about a competition, about blah, blah, blah. And that's not what we were doing. And we were doing spin. We weren't doing the serious, like the English politics podcast, that kind of thing. So it isn't, I'm not saying everything should be narrative, everything should be suspense. I'm saying each genre has its own, yes.
Okay, so I'm leaving to the audience. Do you have any questions to our speakers? Should have. No? Yes. One front and one Mbak Vivi. First one, yes.
Just do I need a mic or?
Yes, I think so. Because...
Okay, I got the mic first.
Oh, no.
Go for it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. I think this question was meant for Chicha. Chicha, I think congratulations for the award that you received before. I think it's well deserved for your work and well done research for us. I think my question is for Bocaralus is there any strategy that that podcast would be the main product of Tempo also? Because right now I feel like it's just an upper funnel for people to subscribe for Tempo, right? So I think the treatment, like it's 30-minute podcast. Meanwhile, I think every other podcast is making like 40 minutes up. And would there be any significant strategies on your side to penetrate the TikTok market? I think in YouTube it's pretty consistent for now, right? I think the views are like on millions up, but on TikTok side, I think if every one of us trying to fight hoax, but it's like circulated mainly on like short form format, right? But like I think the profile of Bocaralus, I think it's not as significant, as big as it is in YouTube. So in short form, would that be any like special treatment coming from Bocaralus? Thank you.
Yeah, I can explain with bahasa Indonesia. Yang pertama tentang bagaimana strategi kami mengembangkan podcast dengan 30 menit dan sebagainya. Tujuan utama kami untuk membuat podcast sebetulnya adalah untuk menarik penonton agar menjadi pembaca langganan kami. Maka yang kami lakukan adalah bukan membatasi durasi, tapi kami memanfaatkan durasi yang kami batasi selama 30 sampai 40 menit misalnya. Karena biasanya penonton itu akan bosan di 40 menit atau di 35 menit pertama. Maka kami memanfaatkan waktu selama 30 menit untuk mengcompile semua isu yang ada di majalah Tempo, di laporan utama majalah Tempo kami itu dengan narasi, dengan audiovisual selama 30 menit. Dan kami biasanya menyimpan berbagai detail informasi agar penonton itu membaca majalah kami. Jadi misalnya untuk nama aktor besar dalam suatu skandal, kami menyampaikan di Bocaralus Politik bahwa ada nama besar yang terlibat skandal korupsi misalnya, atau ada nama besar yang terlibat skandal penyalahgunaan wewenang kekuasaan gitu. Tapi di siapa nama itu kami sebutkan di majalah Tempo. Jadi kami membatasi informasi pada detail-detail itu. Yang kedua, bagaimana kami mencoba untuk berstrategi di platform lain, di YouTube. Kami sangat kuat di X, di YouTube, dan di Instagram. Tapi di TikTok pasar kami itu berbeda. Di TikTok banyak Gen Z yang mungkin terpapar informasi yang kami menyebut Gen Z di TikTok itu kekritisannya kurang, gitu. Jadi daya kritisnya kurang. Tapi kami tetap membuat reels di TikTok dengan punchline yang ada di Bocor Halus Politik agar pengakses TikTok, agar orang-orang yang memiliki akun TikTok itu melihat YouTube kami secara utuh, penasaran dengan apa yang kami bicarakan di YouTube, dan akhirnya mereka teredukasi di situ. Jadi kami mencoba untuk terus mengedukasi dan juga menggandeng komunitas Gen Z, komika. Kami bekerja sama dengan Panji Pragiwaksono, kami membuat event bareng. Pasarnya siapa? Ya pasarnya salah satunya segmentasinya adalah orang-orang yang menggemari komedi, menggemari komik di TikTok gitu.
Okay, so one of the first ideas for Tempo to build this podcast is to drive audience to subscribe to the magazine and also to the online other digital products. And they noticed that people get bored above 30 minutes, so they decided to compile the juicy information up front with some narration and audiovisual, and it works as a spill the tea kind of format, so the whole information will be available when you subscribe. And then for TikTok, according to Tempo research, they consider Gen Z on TikTok is less critical compared to them on X and Instagram, so they're now stronger on X and Instagram. They also collaborate with communities to push the content stronger. And it's over to you. The second question, I think I have to leave two questions.
All right, just a quick one. Thank you so much for doing this. Peter, a question on the beginning part of your presentation where you were talking about data mining and how you analyzed other countries. What are the data points that you were looking at? That's the first question. Second question, was that only based on the number of listeners, or did you guys look at any other data point to inform which category you were not there just yet?
Yes. As a researcher doing this for 25 years, this is me being a little bit cavalier with data. So basically, I'm looking at downloads because that's usually the currency that these are doing. And as I'm looking across a lot of different, I need to find some sort of common currency. So it just has to stay with that. I know individual rankers, and if you have subscriptions to certain, you can measure time spent and those things. But I was looking for an aggregate and also a proxy for what I could define as the most successful genres in certain markets. So I'm not looking for individual listening time or individual popularity in certain podcasts. I'm looking like an overview. So am I wrong in thinking that we are really bad at true crime in Denmark? No, I'm not wrong. I mean, generally speaking, across 10 public available rankers, they're doing much better on downloads. And we can talk metrics a lot, but this was just to get an idea of this is a popular genre. We should be doing this. So I get you. I would like more. But for this purpose, I believe downloads is adequate to get that general sense of, well, 9 out of 10 markets are doing really well in true crime. We are not. What are we doing wrong? I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay, but Vivi, if you have a super quick question, the last one, before we move to the next question.
Just want to ask about the subscription. How is it going? Is it going well, or what is your challenges to encourage people to subscribe the podcast? Thank you.
Ya, untuk mencoba untuk reach out subscriber kami memang terus berusaha untuk mengedukasi dan trial and error untuk kami mencoba melihat di beberapa episode begitu ya, menganalisis episode ini berapa persen peningkatan subscriber atau berapa persen dampaknya kepada subscriber. Kami sedang mencoba mengolah, sedang mencoba trial and error untuk membuat semacam member untuk penonton podcast Bocor Halus Politik yang mungkin nanti akan apa ya namanya, akan menjadi proyek besar kami, yakni orang yang menonton podcast Bocor Halus Politik mungkin nanti akan berbayar. Jadi 10 menit pertama kami akan menayangkan secara free, tapi setelahnya kami akan menyampaikan informasi secara lengkap, tapi untuk mendukung jurnalisme yang independen, subscriber harus mensubscribe-nya, harus membayar, harus paywall gitu, dan sedang pelan-pelan dikaji, belum menjadi sebuah kebijakan, tapi saya rasa itu, kami rasa di Tempo itu bagus untuk mendukung jurnalisme independen agar media bertahan dengan salah satunya dengan subscriber dan tidak bergantung pada iklan. Kita tahu media bergantung pada iklan-iklan pemerintah, maka salah satu bentuk dukungan publik adalah dengan mensubscribe Tempo.
Okay, so Cica mentioned that Tempo is going forward to subscription based. So probably in the near future, Bocor Halus podcast will be available for free for the first 10 minutes, and then you have to pay. This is very important for Tempo and also other media organizations to for the people, for the public to support independent journalism. So I guess time is out and we have to move on to the next session. Thank you so much for your attention. Give a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you so much, Peter and Cica, and over to you,
Thank you,
James.
Citra.